And welcome back to Morning, guys. Welcome back to your weekend episodes here on our IGTV. As you guys should know, if you guys are here, I presume that you've tuned in because you've tuned into our other episodes. We are currently discussing the Presocratics here on Morning. Throughout the weekend, we do 3 episodes a week now, and on the weekends we will be discussing a different Presocratic every day, just so that you guys get a basic explanation of these guys. So today we're going to be discussing Empedocles. This is his name, and before we really get into the episode, do not forget to hit that subscribe button so that you know when we post, and you guys can keep checking us out and keep learning some things about the ancient Greek world. So today, Empedocles. So Empedocles was probably born around 490-ish BC and probably died somewhere in like 430. Yeah. Didn't live that long. So that's supposedly his dates. Whenever I say supposedly, take them with a grain of salt, because this is just kind of what we're inferring from other writers. So just, he didn't write, I was born this day or whatever. So just bear that in mind. Whenever I say dates, I say that all over this channel, that the dates are not certain. But one of the writers actually that we learned this from is Aristotle, and Aristotle hails him. He was like, yeah, this guy's incredible, because supposedly Empedocles is the guy that really kind of came up with rhetoric, the style of rhetoric and speaking and all that kind of jazz. So that's what Aristotle says. I'm inclined to trust Aristotle, so that's kind of who we're discussing. Unfortunately, nothing really of his writing survives apart from this like 400-line poem. If you haven't realized, that poem is kind of the normal style of writing. So we have like the one 400-line poem, but aside from that, we don't have anything. And once again, it is mostly a lot of references. Wow, that was a weird hiccup. But it's a lot of references from other people and what they say about, in this case, Empedocles. Now, the poem is relevant, and it was relevant to mention because Empedocles was directly sort of responding and influenced by someone who we discussed last week called Parmenides. And Parmenides had written a whole poem about this goddess, like walking him through to the light and blah, blah, blah. And so Empedocles sort of picks up on that and takes it like 4 steps further. So he says explicitly in his poem that all matter comes from these 4 ingredients, let's say, of the earth, and that's fire, water, earth, and air, right? So those are the 4 ingredients, and everything comes from that, and nothing can really just kind of like spring up, nothing just like comes into being. Like this cup doesn't just come into being. It's composed of, starts off as clay or whatever, and that comes from the earth, and that's sort of his argument. That's just proof, by the way, that sometimes this thing just sits here and doesn't have anything on it. So great. Now, obviously, these elements there has to be a way for the elements to be broken down and also brought back together. So they need to be separated and brought together, because a common theme with all of these guys even is kind of this whole idea of duality. So something needs to push these 4 elements apart, something needs to push them back together, and that is the argument of love and strife. So love and strife is an argument that pops up a lot in these Presocratics. Love and strife, whether it is sort of like an emotion or whether it's a power, it's a very, very popular involvement in these Presocratics. And in fact, Heraclitus, who we're discussing tomorrow, I think, or next week, Heraclitus, he is big on love and strife. So the way that Empedocles uses love and strife, though, is Empedocles says, look, strife is what comes in between all of these. So that's what causes everything to sort of separate. So earth separates from fire and from wind because strife gets in the middle, but then they're all sort of brought back together in different combinations through love. Now, this is because initially when the cosmos were all formed together, these 4 elements were kind of one on top of the other. And so the way that they initially got separated and distinguished as their own sort of thing was through strife, and then they came back together in different forms through love, kind of like a volcano. That's like the best example, that a volcano is a combination of earth and fire, and so that was love bringing them together to make that, or like a spring which requires earth and water, those sorts of things. They all come back together after the cosmos was like formed. They got separated, and then in order to create everything, they had to come together in different combinations. That's really the basis of his argument. That's sort of the important part of his argument, in my opinion. Anyways, when I read it, that's really the most important thing, especially about this one, is sort of this whole formation of how the universe is. If you haven't realized, that's the running theme with all these guys. They just have different views on how the whole world and the whole universe was formed. However, Empedocles does take it like a step further, and he talks about souls. So he gets more onto the topic of of like what a soul is and blah blah blah. And really the most important part about that argument is his discussion of how souls get punished. So what he says though about souls is he says, look, if you sinned, right? So let's say that you're living a life of sin, okay? And you're just like, you know, I'm gonna do this thing because I know that I shouldn't, but like it excites me, or whatever it is that, you know, you happen to want to do, you know, with your sin, that's fine. But if you live in sin, then your soul gets punished for some stupid amount, like 30,000 years or some kind of where you've got to like roam the earth going from like thing to thing, so you're not stuck in the same body. In fact, it's kind of like that whole like transmission of souls, is that your soul will then go into other bodies for 30,000 seasons to therefore be punished and be made to like, you know, exist in different bodies and all of that kind of lovely uplifting jazz that we have going on in the ancient world. Now there is a way to get purified, I know that, but the way of getting purified is also kind of stupid. So he says, you know, even if you do live a life of sin, you can be purified like upon death, and then therefore you'll be okay. But it's also just like, I mean, like, come on, like, off. But really, the most important part of his argument, the most important part for you guys to remember from this video, is his discussion of the 4 ingredients of the earth, because we're really going with this whole, how was the universe sort of formed in the Presocratic sort of discussion that we're having here on this channel. So just remember that he's the dude that identifies the 4 elements of the earth. He identifies the earth, water, fire, and air, and he says it's those 4 things coming together and separating and then rebuilding. It's those 4 things that have created this, and therefore can create something like this, because things don't just come into being. Things come from one of those 4 elements, or a combination of those 4 elements. So yeah, so that's Empedocles. That's really the important part of the argument. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed this video, please, for the love of God, if you're on YouTube or you're on Instagram, it doesn't really matter. We love all of you. So please hit that heart button if you're on Instagram. Hit the like button if you are on YouTube, just so that we know if you guys are engaging with this, if you guys are learning anything from this, if these are short enough. And if you guys do want the analysis of any of these philosophers, because we know that we're only doing the explanation, very, very short and simple. If you guys want that, then please do leave a comment and say, you know, I want to know more. Like, let's just write that. And we will get to filming some of the analysis and some of the arguments that a lot of people put up against these Presocratics later on in Greek history, but also nowadays. So yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be uploading tomorrow as well. We'll be talking about Heraclitus, I think. If not, then we will still see you tomorrow with your last episode of the week. So we will see you then. Cheers, guys.